You're listening to Glow On with Charla Story
and Jennifer Wilson. We're not just photographers. We're your trusty guides in the world of photography, business, and a bit of life wisdom. Every week, we'll be lighting up your feed with practical tips, inspiring stories, and a sprinkle of humor just to keep you smiling.
We've captured luxurious weddings, mentored talented students at Develop Academy, and navigated the ups and downs of the photography world to bring you insights and strategies that work. Whether you're looking to sharpen your skills, boost your business, or just hang out with two friends who get it, you're in the right place.
So grab your favorite beverage, get comfy,
and let's dive into another episode of Glow On.
Hey, Glow On listeners, it's Jennifer, and I'm obviously here with my fabulous co-host, Charla.
Why, hello. We are so excited for today's episode because we are taking you back to one of the most powerful moments from our online conference, Glowchella. This is our skin tones panel.
Ugh, yes. So this panel was more than just a conversation. It was a deep, honest dive into why we as wedding professionals really need to take responsibility very seriously in caring for every beautiful, diverse skin tone that exists. This isn't just a part of our work. It is the heart of what we do and every business we own. So it means a lot to us.
It absolutely does. We go into some real impactful discussions that are still resonating with us today. It's all about ensuring that every person we work with feels seen, valued, and celebrated.
Yeah. And even though we tackled some pretty big topics during this discussion, you know how it goes. It's obviously going to have a few moments that were engaging, and you might have a few laughs in there. I don't fully remember, but I do remember crying and walking away a new person.
It was highly impactful. So grab your favorite cozy spot, get ready to soak in some serious knowledge, and let's revisit the Skin Tones panel from Glowchella 2023. You're listening to Glow On.
You guys, we are so excited. If we're completely honest, have we been looking forward to this panel since the birth of the idea of Glowchella?
Or the Develop Academy.
Yeah, also that. Yes. You guys, this is the Skin Tones panel. Welcome to all of our incredible and incredibly talented guest panelists here. We want to take a second and introduce all of you guys. Will you tell us where you're from, who you are, what you do? Why don't we start up there in the top left with Ashley?
Okay, so I live in Fort Worth, actually, which is about 45 minutes from Dallas. And I'm a wedding designer and planner with Saunter Weddings. And I've been doing this for 14 years now, so I feel like it's been a minute. Yeah, nice to see everybody here.
Thanks for being here. John!
Hi, everybody. I am in Orange County, California, and I've been shooting for roughly 15 years or so. And I've seen from the Jose Villas to now, I've kind of lost track because I stepped away from social media because of my situation with my family and stuff. And I'm just trying to get back, but it's kind of just more focused on family.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really honored to be in this panel, and hopefully I can shed some light and some experience.
Excited to have you, John. Carlos.
Hi, my name is Carlos Hernandez. I'm a photographer from Portland, Oregon. I've been in this business for 13 years. So it's been a little bit too. I'm excited to share a little bit about the topic.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm Sacia Matthews. I am based in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm headed into my 8th year of business, and I primarily shoot destination wedding weekend.
Perfect. And Charmi.
Hi, I am Charmi Pena. I am a wedding photographer. I'll photograph anything, though, so not newborn, if you think, but not newborn. Whatever. No. I am an icon ambassador and an Imagine talent, and this is one of my favorite subjects. So
Yes.
yeah, I'm really excited to talk about it.
Well, we are, I hope you know, Charla and Jen.
Oh, yeah.
I've been photographing people for 20 years. I've been photographing people also
and strictly people for 14 years. And I own Kindred Presets, and our number one goal from the very beginning has always been equitable and beautiful skin tones. So this matters a lot to us.
Yes. And when we started Develop Academy and the glow ups, if you will, the first glow up that we did was the skin tones glow up. And it's a glow up that we do every single year because we feel so strongly about the topic and educating people as much as possible, which is why we are freaking stoked about this panel. So those of you that are listening, we want you to be in the comments. We want you to be asking questions. This is going to be very candid. All questions are allowed. There's no stupid questions. So we're going to jump in and get started.
Yes.
So Ashley, could you share a moment within our industry that was a milestone for skin tone diversity and inclusion, and what stood out to you?
Okay, so I think about 2020, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you think about 2020. It was kind of like our great awakening. You know, we all were just made aware of so many different racial issues, and it was almost like that year just put a mirror in front of ourselves, and it made us look at our own biases. It made us look at our circles of influence. It made us look at our friend groups, who we choose to spend time with, who we support as vendors. And I think that time was just extremely crucial and made a major shift in conversation for our industry. I remember that there were so many posts about all the things that was going on, because this was just like right after like a lot of the Black Lives Matter, things that were going on in the news, and it started to open up a door for our wedding industry. I thought the conversations were they were very transparent, and everybody kind of had like a woke moment, whether that meant that you were being educated or you were someone that was educating other people and opening yourself up for dialogue and challenge and growth. So I would probably say that.
Can you give us an example of things you personally experienced because of that as a result?
Yeah, so I remember I made this post on Instagram about a long time experience ago, where I was working for another company, and the owner at that time was Caucasian. And I told her that I had a meeting with our clients and the venue that we were looking at. And so we went to this venue. It was white-owned venue, but our clients were Black. And we get into the elevator. And when we get in the elevator, there's another couple that is with us, and they are Caucasian. They told us that their appointment was after our appointment. So we get off of the elevator, and the owner of the venue is there, and they greet the other couple, and they shake their hand. And then I extend my hand to shake their hand, and they just look at it, and then they tell me, "We'll be with you in a moment." Now, our appointment was first, and their appointment was after. And that couple then told them, no, their appointment is actually before ours. And then she again said, "We'll still be with you in a moment." And it was kind of like, whoa, for us. So I talked about that on my social media posts during the Great Awakening in 2020. And it got so many comments because so many people just were shocked that these kind of things happen in our industry. And I opened myself up for conversations. If anyone wanted to have conversations, you can message me, you can call me. I'm happy to talk about some of these things. And so for me, it opened up so many really transparent, deep, emotional conversations that I feel like moved the needle forward, because for me, it was beautiful to see that someone cared enough to know and want to grow, want to get better, and not just continue in the same ignorance. So, yeah, that was a big shift for me.
Yeah. I'm so sorry that happened. And that was not easy to share on social and invite people to have that conversation, because that conversation is deep and it can be emotionally draining, and you offered to do it over and over. And so that took a lot of guts. It did.
Yeah. I'm just glad that, to see that there were people who were even compassionate and wanting to know more and wanting to be better. And so I think it did some good.
Yeah. Well, Carlos, can you recount a time in the industry where you felt a milestone for skin tone diversity and inclusion as well?
Yeah, actually, I think it was probably around the same time, Ashley, you're talking about, soon after George Floyd and all that, where like all of these thoughts were heightened and people wanted to, ask more from all the vendors and everybody involved. And I had a couple that reached out to me, and I typically ask on my questionnaire, like, what stood out from my photography to you, so I can get a sense of kind of where they're coming from.
Mhm.
And one of the things was like, we have found it very hard to find photographers that portray our skin tones correctly. And yes, we're an American couple. To me, to hear that was like, wait, so there is an issue. We do tend to have something a little bit different. Because I mean, I'm shooting over here and I'm trying to portray all the, and I think for the most part, if we are of color, we have those thoughts. We're thinking about how to portray those colors. So to me, it was a non-issue. Like we're doing this since the beginning.
Yeah.
But to hear that there is an issue, kind of like wanted me to like search of like, why is that happening? What is the history? So that brought me to, and actually before we came in here, I was going to ask if you were going to talk about the Shirley cards. And I don't know if, I'm assuming if you're a photographer, you probably have heard of the Shirley cards of like way back in the day when Kodak started coming out with their film. They had a card with a person on it and a bunch of this around it. There was a V card for all of the print shops and everywhere to like to match that to make sure that the color was correct that they were printing to or where they were developing to. And it always was a person that was white. And for the longest time, there's people who continue to talk about that and be like, hey, why aren't we portraying also different colors? And finally they did, but unfortunately it wasn't because people of color were talking about this. It was because I guess somebody in the chocolate industry was like, hey, with the photos that you're taking, we can't tell whether this is a dark chocolate or a milk chocolate. And that was the reason why they changed oh, there is a problem. So it wasn't necessarily because, people, it was because they're an industry that they were spending a lot of money on this. I mean,
It was brought back to money. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I had no idea what you were talking about. And anytime I hear Shirley, I think of the movie Airplane, and I did not at all have any idea. And I'm glad that you have enlightened us on that. Wow.
yeah, look it up. TR has a great article on it. They actually interviewed the person who got everything changing, and they started introducing people of color. I think at first they had an Asian person, and then I think it was a black person, and then years after they had somebody who was Latin.
We're dropping the link to what he's talking about, that PR article, in the comments right now.
Anyway, but yeah, so that to me, it was a huge mindset shift of like, I need to make sure that even my work is portraying all the colors. And I know that we all have difference of editing, and we all have, a little bit of our own flair to photography. So it's not always going to be exactly the same. And depending on what film you use, it's going to be a little bit different. But trying to stay true to those tones. And we're talking about, we have the undertones, which are, with the yellow undertones, we have the red undertones, and to really study that and to make sure those are super important.
I mean, even when we look at like Fenty and what Rihanna's been able to do in the makeup world, that was what, 2017?
Right.
I mean, before that, for foundation for women, Carlos, as I'm sure you know, we had like 7 options.
Right.
And we're very fair, very pale. And we even had 2 options. And actually, neither one of those were even correct. And we often had to blend them together. But then Rihanna comes out with like 80 colors.
Incredible.
And why did it take so long? When was there ever only 7 colors of skin tone? And what a missed opportunity in the makeup world for so long.
Right.
But even when you think of it that way, now when we go buy makeup, you have to be matched because it's the color of your skin, plus your undertones, plus your age, plus your skin. And now you're like, this is incredible because I can just put my makeup on and it feels and looks like skin, and it's not this big ordeal. And when we apply that to this, it's just wild that not only that it took so long, but also that the conversation just wasn't being had.
Yeah.
It's baffling. And I don't know. Yes, Charmi.
Can I just add to that? There's actually 2 brands whose name I can't remember right now. And they just came out with new makeup lines in the last month. And none of them cater to darker skin tones. One of them even has a box that shows an extremely dark tone. And when somebody of that tone puts it on, it's about 10 shades lighter. And so I bring that up and I reference that to say, are there changes happening? Yes. Are the conversations happening? Yes. Even in photography, we aren't where we need to be.
No, we're not. And that's why, so we've been having this conversation for years.
Yeah.
And we find that people are highly uncomfortable having it. Even people that are well-versed, that are honest and open, that are encouraging, that have the best intentions are still terrified to have it. And as long as we're terrified to have uncomfortable conversations, we don't learn.
Right.
And that's why we're so happy that all of you are here.
Yeah. Change will never happen in a place of comfort. That's just not how things operate.
I mean, it's been almost 4 years since the Great Awakening,
right?
It's actually,
I love that that's what it's called now.
it's the Great Awakening.
I love it. That's, yep. Renaming the panel to that. Sacia, have you ever encountered a situation in the wedding industry specifically that was disheartening with the regard to skin tone representation, and what made it so?
Yeah, I think I can probably speak from a personal perspective and from a business perspective. On the personal end, I'm also married to a Black man who, for whatever reason, he really cares about who we hire for our photographers. Like, we always have a very open conversation about it because we have gotten images back ourselves from really important life events where our skin tones weren't accurately portrayed and we had to go in to get it, or, we had to have a conversation with a photographer who was usually often a friend, and which can kind of blur down. It is uncomfortable being from a client perspective, trusting a photographer to do this and then getting images back where you're like, oh, like the orange, or we want blue, or we want green, or whatever the place may be. It wasn't really until that happened that it even put it in the forefront for me. I think Carlos was saying, it just naturally was always a thing for my business. Like, we always took care of skin tones. We never had an issue with whether you were fair or dark or whatever. And and I didn't know that there was actually a problem with that until I became a client myself. When we were looking at photographers, it was either we weren't represented at all on the website for somebody who we were attracted to the aesthetic, but we couldn't see ourselves through their portfolio, or it was, we would do an engagement session or something and it wasn't going to be a fit. And so they were like, okay, well, we can't trust this person with a wedding because that's even there. From a business perspective, seeing locations with weddings that are rightfully gorgeous, but the skin tones are clearly off.
Yeah.
I'm seeing like tremendous growth in the industry in representation, but I also still see a lot of, like, I find it rare to find two darker skinned people together, in the forefront of a publication or used in an editorial, and that's just the thing I've noticed. And so it's been like interesting to see the growth, but then still the level of like, oh, this is as far as we go. We're gonna go.
Right. Like we have a limit.
Like a baby step, And that's why things take so damn long.
Right.
It doesn't have to.
Piggyback on her.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I was just thinking about my experience with film photographers. A long time ago, locally, we used to do these shootouts where there would be a planner and a photographer that would work together and plan an amazing shootout, and we'd have dinner after. So when it was my turn to plan one, I started looking at all the different photographers in the area and noticing that there were no people of color in most of their portfolios.
Yeah.
And so I decided I wanted to have a Black model be a part of the shootout so that they could have experience with dealing with darker skin tones. And it was astounding to me when I got all of the film back and I noticed how different she looked in all of these different albums. I mean, some of them, she just looked dead and gray and ashy. And Black people have a thing about being ashy.
Right.
Was just so disheartening. There was such an opportunity there to grow and to learn how to get it right, but the conversations just weren't being had. And I think it goes to what you were saying, those uncomfortable conversations. You have to be willing to have them if you want to be able to grow.
Well, there's just so much to know and so much to learn. And so that you're obviously in a restricted environment for that shoot. So what I was expecting you to say was the film was incredible and it was the most true to tone. But that's not what happened because photographers have told their labs things that would make that not true. Or they go in and post and they just edit to what pleases their eye and their current brand and their aesthetic and what they're used to out of muscle memory, but without intention. I had a conversation recently with a friend of mine, Tosh, and she explained something to me that broke my heart in a lot of ways. She is a beautiful woman of color, and she talked about how her mother had to teach her what to expect that she should look like in photos, and how she is teaching her 3 daughters, yes, that is what you look like, that is not what you look like, and that is a conversation they have to have, and that is not a conversation I have ever had to even consider in my worldview. And so I apologize that has to be a conversation that is still being had. And I'm so grateful that we are seeing baby steps, that there was a great awakening and that we can look forward to a generation that just doesn't have to have that.
Yeah. And on that, like, I feel like probably all of you here have had similar conversations, or maybe you've taken a step out and educated a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I giggled earlier because I was at the shoot that Ashley is talking about, and
pictures were great. I'm just going to say that.
Diversity in my portfolio before that. I wasn't coming to defend myself, but what I was going to say, we don't all have Ashleys. And I can only speak to Ashley because it's a personal experience. She literally messaged everyone and was like, what is this shit?
Okay, good.
This is not good. So she is brave enough to have the conversation, even if it's uncomfortable, and help educate people because she's highly intentional about how she wants people to be educated and perceived about photographing people with dark skin tones and herself and her family and her kids. And also she uses her business to be an advocate in every possible way, in every direction. So
True.
I don't even know that those photographers are aware of how lucky they were to have somebody in their ear having that conversation so early on for them to have the opportunity for that growth. I will say personally, I don't even remember. I just remember getting an email one day from a girl that was in college, and she said she was doing some college project and it was somehow on photo, and she was looking for diverse wedding portfolios. And she was like, I just wanted to personally email you and say, I have scoured our local market and you're the first person I've come across. And then she wrote me this very, very touching and beautiful email. And before that, I was so ignorant that I didn't even realize that that was unique or that there was a problem or there was something I should have been doing. I was just doing my job. So I think I just got probably lucky, to be honest, that I had those clients coming to me and was able to execute. But that was a huge moment for me to be like, oh, without knowing it, I might have a voice that can help others in something that I was completely unaware of. So that bravery that Ashley, and I'm sure all of you have had, and then this girl, I've gotten many messages and emails like this throughout my career at this point. You have to be able to say it to change the mindset and educate and make change, because I had no idea.
Yeah. So just to my own few small short stories of things I've seen go wrong before 2020, because around 2020 I stopped engaging just a tiny bit for my own well-being. Well before 2020, there were, before we had AI, there were a lot of presets on the market, and light and airy, which remains a aesthetic people love, was very popular, and Black and brown photographers would buy presets, apply them to their Black and brown clients. And when they got washed out human beings, the response from the preset makers was, well, that's just my style. And I feel like it needs to be said that no one's style is to make humans look completely different than they are. You can be light and airy and have a dark-skinned Black woman look absolutely beautiful. And there's not an excuse on the planet for saying things like, that's just my style. My style is to blow out your skin and make you look whiter than you are.
Yeah, no, it's unacceptable.
John, I would love for you to chat a little bit because you photograph light and airy and incredible film and of course you're in California, but still you get the most amazing depth in your skin tones while still shooting film and having a light and airy vibe. Can you talk about that process, and was it always something that you were aware of, or were you always highly intentional with that?
Absolutely, yeah. I think what helped me most was I worked in the print industry for like years in the offset. So we worked with like Kodak plates and everything was always Pantones, matching this, matching that. It was very technical. And so when I started shooting, I started with film, but I didn't use that for work. I was just using that for personal stuff. And when I started shooting like people, I started with digital. And editing with digital back then and the camera sensors and the technology wasn't really good. So I'm sitting there adding contrast, adding color, white balance, and it was just always off. And I think I was very fortunate to jump into film. And with film, it's like it's always true to colors as long as you're choosing the certain lighting conditions. And so I was always taught by good mentors, like John Callis was my first mentor for film. And it's just like looking at the work and the depth. It's not about light and airy. It's about true to color, embracing the light and seeing how the undertones are, how it works with each other, and understanding like what the memories are when you see a photo. It's like, that's what I want to capture because that makes it classic and timeless.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel like I've gotten my depth, and just sitting back, looking at it is like, is this right? And then going back again. And I've edited things like 5-6 times because my eyes had to adjust based on my lighting condition, how I felt. So yeah, I think that's what has helped me.
Oh, that's so good.
With that background of being in the print, because again, we have all the color we do on the computer, but then printing has its own entire color situation, and same with scanning film. What I would like all of you, and I'll start with you, John, because you're already on the topic. What is one essential understanding about skin tones that you feel and cultural diversity you believe every industry professional should know?
I think overall, like keep the skin peachy, right? So if there's an undertone of, Asian skin, which is undertones of yellow, right? Keep it peachy, but keep it true, right? There's always that middle ground. If you're making someone so bright and white and you're washing out their pigments, well, that's not real. That's just gonna look dated, or it's gonna look wrong. It's gonna look trendy. So I feel always understand everybody wants to have that glowy, peachy skin, but embrace the undertones of who they are and what, how the light hits them. So that's what I would say. And, that's why, in photography, they have the white balance, right? It's always 55, 56K. If you're choosing light that is true to life, how the film is, designed and produced for that, you're always going to get that true to color.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And then like light area is good, but I always felt like my highlights should never be blown. So that's like my anchors, right? I have my blacks, I have my whites and my highlights where I have to get right into the middle ground. And I've never felt like my photos were so bright, but I never liked it so dark because I feel like it's a mood thing, right?
Yeah.
But the skin tone is always targeted for peachy tones, but which is an undertone.
Yes, 1,000,000%. What about you, Carlos?
Yeah, so I have some rules of thumb when I'm editing. Assuming that, and this is mainly for photographers, assuming that you exposed everything correctly and everything was great just on your screen or you're doing film, if you have people of darker tones, then typically I don't touch midtones at all. That's one of the most important things. If you have somebody with lighter skin colors, then I try to touch the highlights. It's a little bit easier to touch, the midtones and the dark tones as well. So that's kind of been like my rule of thumb. If you don't touch the midtones and when you're editing somebody of color, then you're usually going to be pretty good on the spot. Also, remember your white balance. Somebody who has yellow undertones is really easy to look green. If you have somebody who has red undertones, it's easy for them to look, a little bit orange. If you don't know what undertones are, look it up. You need to understand what those are.
Yeah. So, Ashley, what about you? So that we are getting a different perspective since you are not a photographer. And I'm just realizing it probably would have been nice to speak to a videographer.
Whoop, next time. So I'm thinking about the different wedding professionals that have come to me and said, I want to have a diverse portfolio, but I'm just not attracting those inquiries. I'm not attracting those potential clients. And so my challenge to them was to start offering, maybe a family session to a brown or black family in your neighborhood. Just get experience with shooting different skin tones. If you can do that, you will improve your craft and you will start to attract the clients that you want to have in your portfolio. People, when they see that you don't have representation in your portfolio, they're gonna be hesitant to go to you, just kind of like what she was saying earlier about looking for a wedding photographer. They're going to be really hesitant because they want to make sure, especially people of color who have been captured all kinds of ways with wrong undertones and skin tone, and representation. So they want to see themselves represented well. And so that would be my advice, is to start looking in the circles around you, see what you can offer and get the experience, and it'll help, build your portfolio. I also would say, just from the personal side of, developing relationships with people who don't look like you, and people who have brown and black skin tones, and really representation of all. Look at your circles. That was something that I talked about on my Instagram post, is look at your mastermind. Look at the people who you are in circulation with. Look at who you're inviting on the fam trips. Look at who's on the speaker panel. And don't be afraid to challenge the organizer and say, hey, I'm not seeing full representation here. And, I'm pretty sure all of us saw recently the posts from Emergence and how that kind of played out with, and if you're not familiar, that is they put on a conference. It's like a retreat, and they were hosting it at a venue that has plantation. And so it created a whole lot of dialogue, and it didn't really go so well. And I think it is important for us, even if we had a great awakening in 2020, continue to be awake, continue the conversations, continue to do the work, and get the practice with the skin tones if you're not familiar with how to correctly shoot diverse people.
Yes. Also, when you're looking at diversity, I just want to jump in right here for a second. Photographers, videographers, planners, diversity, I can see why we immediately think our portfolio. But just a reminder, diversity is in general in your teams. Yeah. Like, your team should look diverse. Your work should look diverse. Your experience should look diverse. Yeah. And if you're putting on a conference or something of that sort, the speaking lineup should be diverse. And if you're choosing to do it in a controversial situation, I recommend getting ahead of it, making it a conversation, turning it into a positive, maybe finding a way to give back, and not, And I giggled, which I realized I wish I did a better job checking my face, because it's probably like, wow, she's giggling while Ashley's saying this. And it's because Ashley and I are friends, and she was like, oh, look at this. That looks like a real white lineup. And like, those are things I think about a little, but not as much, because I'll be like, oh, yeah, and it takes having that friend saying those things over and over that makes you then look at something and be like, that's really white. That has no diversity. I should say something, right. Or I don't want to be tied to it because it doesn't speak to what I'm all about. So just another vote for bravery and understanding that diversity is not just one thing. It's a lot of things. Sacia, would you like to share with us one thing that you think every industry professional should know?
And when I wrote my notes, I was going to bring out understanding the basic color theory as well. And it sounds like you ladies do a really great job of that with your glow up. And, I know that I've said to you before, I wish that you were local to take our family photos because you do understand colors and you do understand skin tones. That's right. But I heard something else while I was sitting here, and I don't know, this may be like not controversial. You may have a different opinion on this. But I I actually have a handful of people that will reach out to me directly and ask me to like look at a reference image or look at a gallery before they send it off to their diverse clients. And I never have an issue with that because I would rather me see it and be able to give some constructive criticism to fix it before they give it to the client and the client is let down by something. I highly recommend that if you have people in your circles that would be comfortable with doing that until you reach a point comfort with symptoms, that you do reach out to them and ask for their feedback because I will always give it to you straight. I wanted to tell you.
But with that Southern charm, right? I love that you do that. That it's so impactful in such a immediate and tangible way to see growth. And I love that you have friends that are asking and taking you up on that as well.
Speaking of that,
It's a safe space.
may I jump in just real quick?
You may. And then we want to hear Charmi tell us her one thing.
So I like what you were saying about seeing others, or maybe even, sometimes it's a little weird asking a friend if it looks right. But I feel like those conversations are important to have. I wasn't doing this until about a year ago, but when I send the sneak peeks, especially to the vendors and to the client, I always say, if there's anything wrong, please let me know. I'll make sure to fix it for the final for the contract. I have had some. I do things wrong too. I'm assuming I do things a little bit different sometimes, and the color of the flower may not be correct. So that's why, hey, florist, if you find something different that you didn't like, let me know because it's also your work, and I want to be able to get it correct. So just always ask. It's always great to get info.
Well, my planners love you, Carlos.
Yeah. Well, I just said to Jen, wow, what a great idea. Just asking, maybe not saying if there's anything wrong, because that makes me something, but saying like, do you any feedback welcome? Because I'm always looking to please everyone. Yeah.
Anything I should be looking for in the final gallery.
Yeah. And so I think I will write that down.
Brilliant.
Because we don't know what we don't know, right? We're never going to know until we ask. And I have learned the most by asking questions that maybe I wasn't even prepared to hear the answer for. Sometimes it might even gut wrench me, but I'm able to take it out of myself, take myself out of the equation and realize like, oh, I just didn't know that and I can do better. And I'm so glad. So don't be afraid to ask questions. That's legit. Charmi, what about you? What's the one thing that you wish that everybody in this industry?
Well, right now, I'm thinking about how I can't do that because I slight flex, turn around my weddings in one night. So they get the whole thing. Well, I think, has anyone ever seen, there's an article or a video out about the lighting for Insecure?
We're going to find it and share.
No, the HBO series. Yeah, it is excellent. And they talk a lot about how lighting has to be different for darker skin tones. And so I would say maybe not to all industry professionals, but maybe a little bit to all industry professionals, because I end up having this conversation with planners a decent amount when they're like, oh, we want this warm glow. And I'm like, that's cool. But the people on stage look like Oompa Loompas right now. And so let's talk about it. So I think lighting is really important to your final result. And that's something you are going to want to think about before you ever hit the editing stage, because you can't fix things you didn't capture appropriately. And yes, I do flex those AI muscles.
Well, I was going to say you might as well take a second to pat a little bit because there's going to be people going, sorry, what is it? And we actually had Imagine /Imogen
on Tuesday, right? They were there Tuesday. I just shot a 6-day wedding in Cabo. The wedding was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Is that 5 days? Maybe it was 5 days, but it was like 8 different events that I shot over those many days, and they had their photos. They were ready Monday. I flew home on Sunday, so I needed a little rest. But the photos were done Monday. And yes, Imagine AI is a huge help to me. Every single day I come back, I cull right away, sometimes on a beach, and and I throw it through the AI. I review it, and then it's done. I upload it before I even left Cabo, except for the reception. Everything was edited except for the reception before Monday. That stuff has changed my life. I was skeptical because a lot of AI is fed images that are white people, not people that look like me or my clients who are often darker than I am. So I really didn't want to give AI a shot for editing at first. But the good thing about Imagine is that I am feeding it my work, right? My work has people who look like me in it.
Right.
And so it has turned out to be absolutely, like, yes, it's a game changer for work, sure, but it's like a game changer for life for me because now I just play video games with my kids more. It's incredible.
Well, Charmi and Sacia, you both hit on something that resonated with me, especially with color theory and the lighting for, gosh, my brain is broken. What's the name of the show again? Sure. I will say Imagine, as you know. And we talk about in our Skin Tones Glow Up the power of like color cast and how you choose your light and all of those things. And if you don't understand color theory, then the way that grass is going to bounce into my skin is completely different than how that's going to render when it bounces into your skin. And all of these things are so nuanced and so important. So I want to encourage our videographers, well, really anyone here, to just observe the world around you when you're out in it. Look at how the things are reflecting off of different people and what they look like. And that's why it's so important, to Ashley's point, to expand your group of influence. Because I know exactly what to expect from my little blonde-headed child. And no matter where I put her in the world, because I'm always with her. But if I don't have anyone who doesn't look like me in my circle, then I don't know what to expect when they step in front of my camera, because all I'm used to is ghostly people, right? So like we have to expand. We have to push ourselves, because if our own frame of reference is one-sided, then we're starting off with a broken leg when we have a client who doesn't look like us in front of our camera.
And although we are just fair-skinned white girls, actually still have skin tone misrepresentation, because the light and airy vibe, it hit us hard too, and we just became ghosts. We just barely, and transparent. And then if you even have light blue eyes, you were just like, God, ultimately what happens is your nose is gone, and you question a nose job because you like the way it looks, and that's not the way that you want to be perceived, you know? So you definitely, like, we still experience it, but we experience it more with, like, if there's green color cast, we are green. We are blue, because we are just basically a reflector. So it still exists for us. It's just so much easier to see. And so when you're working with primarily fair-skinned white girls, especially blonde ones, which is what we primarily saw in publications for a decade, everybody only worked to perfect that one skin tone, that one bride, to attract her so that they could get the publication that they want, so that they could get more money at the next level wedding. And it overall was a domino effect of causing this to get bigger and bigger and snowball. And so that's why we're not just talking about skin tones, but we're also talking about diversity. And diversity isn't always just skin tones. It's also culturally, and understanding that within that spectrum, everybody's culture has different traditions and ways that they do things. And that's a whole nother layer of educating yourself before you're attracting certain clients. So like, you know, Charmi, can you talk, you had a 6-day wedding.
Yeah, I see the comments are like, who does that? A lot of people do that. We like to party hard, okay? There was a lot of partying. There were some traditions, and every night there was like a blowout. In Indian traditions, there are several days of celebration and all the family is involved, which means all the guests are involved, which also means there is elaborate decor for many, many different days. I wish I could show you this wedding. It was actually on my Instagram, but we took it off because it will be in Vogue India.
Congrats.
I can't show anyone. That's okay.
You can
give me some descriptors.
When you share it, and we'll share it like crazy on our Instagram for everybody to see.
I will tag it when it's back up. Yeah, so many, many days, I literally became like one of the family, which is really, really important, actually. If you're going to shoot traditional Indian weddings, you need to become, you can't be, there's sometimes a sense that at big formal weddings, you need to be a fly on the wall. You need to be invisible. You need to disappear. If I showed up in a black suit to any of these events, people would have thrown me in the water. Wow. So I showed up in the colors that were requested, even if I was in joggers, which I often was, and sometimes in shorts because it was Cabo. And become one of the family. You try to get to know everybody. That's how they get comfortable with you, because there is a tradition in India where you kind of just always look at the photographer directly for, traditional photos. And so because that's what people are used to, but not what my couples are looking for, it's almost like a psychological navigation of the crowd you have to learn to get what you need. And so I spent 6 days with this family. And like, I think I'm seeing them tonight. Actually, we're all invited to the Bali somewhere. It's the governor's mansion in New Jersey.
That's fun.
But like, you really have to be willing to get to know people. And don't get me wrong, I have boundaries. Every bride is not my new best friend. I can't afford any more best friends. They're very expensive. But it's really important to get to know these people and their traditions, because diversity within Indian culture is out of this world. You will find people with the same last name and from the same town who have completely different traditions. And so you just kind of have to be ready to learn on the job at all times.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Diversity within diversity, especially when it comes to, so that's what we would love to chat a little bit about before we go to our next question is, can each of you kind of share the different cultural diversities that you've experienced, either planning a wedding or photographing a wedding? Like, I've had Nigerian weddings and Ghanaian weddings. I've had tea ceremonies. I've had Hmong weddings, which is like a Thai ceremony. And I'm not going to lie, again, usually the first time it was just, I was fully unaware and they would explain it. And then it's actually my favorite thing, because I've realized I like photographing people because I love people.
Yeah.
And I choose to serve and be with and enjoy people by using the medium of photography. So when I'm walking into a new tradition, it usually emotionally overwhelms me with great joy and desire for better understanding, and feeds me inspirationally to continue to do what I'm doing. I recently had a wedding where they did their tea ceremony before their ceremony, and everyone in the room was crying. It was so good. And I was honestly jealous that at my wedding tradition, there's nothing that intimate and special for me to get to reference back to. So yeah, I would love, maybe Ashley, if you want to jump in and chat a little bit about diversity within diversity, or culture, whatever.
Yes.
So I'm from Michigan originally, and that's where the company that I first started working for was based. And it was close to an area, Dearborn. It's a huge Indian population. So I actually got my start in doing more Indian weddings. And then we were near U of M. And so there were actually a lot of Nigerian that were students that were at U of M. So we had a lot of Nigerian weddings. I've had Lebanese, I've had Quaker weddings, I've had every and all kinds of weddings I've been a part of. And one of the things that draws me to being a part of weddings is because I get invited into this, like, feels like a secret society of this family, their traditions, what's important to them, what resonates with them, and how they want people to feel. And I love that part of my job. So recently, I was the director of events with Sinclair Moore, and we had a wedding that is now just loaded up on brides, and it was a black couple, and they invited probably, I think, about 50 or so people. And it was really important to her that she wanted to have a very diverse team of vendors. And it wasn't just all Black vendors. We had a mix of vendors. But really important to her was to make sure that her hair and makeup team were African American.
Yeah.
Now, initially, she didn't specify that, but I knew that was going to be important for her because there's been so many bad experiences with having the wrong hair and makeup for a person of color. And even having the foundation shades and having to bring their own foundation shades just to get their makeup done. And so she talks about it in the article about how it felt for her to have people who understood her and her experience. And on the vendor side of it, I interviewed every single vendor that was a part of that wedding. And I wanted them to treat this like a family. Do not look at it through the lens of sometimes the idea that people have about Sinclair or these big productions, but look at it through the lens of family. Treat them like family. You will see their comfort increase with you. And so it was beautiful to see how the photographer and the videographer worked together so seamlessly and how it just seemed like they did it. Everyone just got it. And the vibe, the symmetry amongst the team was almost unlike anything I experienced before when it's so intentional. And so when we talk about, having diverse circles, thinking about the vendors that you work with, if you don't have relationships with vendors that are diverse, to open up those doors and form those relationships because it can really open up so many beautiful experiences for you. And it comes from a desire to have a sense of other experiences, other than what you always experience. So, yeah.
I love it. I love it. I don't want to do a lot of talking. I'm trying not to, but I very, very recently within the last year had a wedding, and my bride has the most gorgeous skin, and it is the deepest skin that I have photographed. And the hair and makeup team did know that, obviously, and they did not have the right color, and they had to leave and go buy more and come back. And watching her and her family knowing that everything was going to be late and how that made her feel, I felt sick, and it was rough. It was a rough one. I was like, I shouldn't say anything to the makeup artist. I didn't, but I wanted to.
Yeah. Hopefully they felt that and have made changes.
They definitely did.
Can I add something?
I'd love for you to go.
So, with an Asian culture that I, pretty much was raised to witness, I've shot so many different Asian weddings, but every culture has a different way of, celebrating their tea ceremonies. And it's like, that's why I think knowing your demographics and having meetings and understanding your client like they're your friends, that has helped me a lot. Because it's like, I want to know what they're expecting. I want to know when I come into a wedding, I go straight to the parents. Can you grab me whatever you need so that I can photograph your friends, your family, whoever? Like, I am not shy about it because I want them to understand that I'm there for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for me, it's like knowing the demographics, knowing the culture beforehand really helps me time and be at each moment for the celebration. And so I visualize things, I do my homework, and when I come in, I'm relaxed. I'm having the bride breathe. I do yoga, so it's like I see their tension in the day where they're nervous or, it's like things are not right. I calm them down. I have emails from my clients like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for whatever you did. I was so calm. So it's like me practicing what I do for myself and that to my clients has changed my game like immensely. And it makes me happy. At the end of the day, it's like I feel so charged. I feel so honored that, hey, I did something where I felt like I was put here on earth to do. And it's such an honor to do that, And then going to clients' homes and seeing their photos like printed, that brings so much to my heart. It fulfills my time of what I've been doing.
Yeah. And that's through and through who you are, John. And it's definitely one of the reasons that you're here and that we absolutely adore you. But when you have that approach, it doesn't matter what is happening in front of you. You can do an excellent job honoring it and photographing it. And so the approach is everything.
Right? Yep, I agree.
Carlos, I would love for you to chat about.
Cool.
Yeah.
Means you know. Come on.
I had a topic earlier, but it just
Oh,
went.
diversity within diversity. So like, different traditions and things that you've experienced and photographed and maybe didn't know about, or maybe you do know about and you realize others don't know about that you want to share with them.
Yeah. Come on.
I think it's the same that everybody said already, like communication with the client. I think it's ideal. I usually have a couple of meetings before the wedding. I mean, several meetings, but right before the wedding, maybe a month or so before, we're having several meetings specifically about what's going to happen at the wedding, traditions, and that kind of thing. Things that I wouldn't necessarily know, even if it's an Indian wedding, right? Like you were saying, Charmi, like there's the different traditions.
Mhm.
My very first Indian wedding, I wouldn't have had this conversation. I wouldn't have known that black clothing was going to be a no-go. So things like that you wouldn't otherwise know if you don't have those conversations. So
Right.
open about the conversations, be friendly about these things, and be open to realize that maybe you had something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the key.
Mm-hmm. Stacia, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, living in well, I started a business in Charleston, so and we just recently moved from there.
I was like, I thought you were in Charleston, but I was like, are you
We recently relocated, but Charleston is very much so my like home base, and even within even southern weddings, there's so many different layers of how it can go.
Yeah.
I think about cultural weddings for me are really, really special because I think of my own lineage this last couple of years. We've done a lot of work in trying to trace through our lineage, and we've gotten down like real granular, like in looking at slave routes and things like that. And I think of how disjointed and disconnected I am from like my original culture and family and ancestry started. And when I go into these like cultural weddings now, it is like so I'm like emotional the entire day, holding my tears the entire day because I ache for that same sense of like connection and belonging within my own culture and family. And so our whole goal the last couple of years has been tracing that so that we can maybe try to get to some like within the South. I get a lot of African American clients who are coming in from other places getting married in churches, and they want to incorporate things that are important to their lineage, whether it's like a jumping the broom ceremony or, just there's a lot of like different really special gifts and traditions and things, and so it's been really fun like having those conversations even with a client like, well, how can we make this really special and intentional for you, and being a part of those brainstorming conversations over the last couple of years has been really fun. And then on the flip side, it's been interesting. I just recently booked a client who reached out and done a guest topic on Charmi Pena and plantation weddings and that whole thing. And I had a client who reached out and she was like, we're thinking of getting married at this venue, and I saw this article about it and would love to know like your perspective as a photographer in the South. And I was like, oh, like, yeah, that's a really important topic. And we kind of had some dialogue. We hopped on the phone. We didn't even have a regular consult, but it's interesting because even the venues are ingrained in culture in this, and having to check through some of that has been really interesting, especially since 2020. I can't say that I've never had those conversations before 2020, but that's been a really great thing to have conversations about. She ultimately took my price and she said venue, but she chose another great venue, and we got the wedding and so the win. So yeah, there's a lot of diversity just even geographically.
Yeah. I love that the conversation got to here because, like, yes, skin tones and the color of our skin and the undertones and all those things, which I think we're going to get to probably in Q&A, but it's so much more than what we are putting out into the world and representation, and making sure that we ourselves are doing the work so that when we have clients who don't look like us in front of our cameras, not only are we representing them well in post, but we are loving them well during the process. And so you might have a client in front of you and have a new opportunity to see a new tradition, but going in with understanding will make them feel seen and know that they are loved and cared for. And that is really what we have to change. So I love that we've gotten here in this conversation so much.
I agree.
We both cried a couple times. Y'all can't see because we're so small.
Thank God. Sacia's like, I'm holding back tears at weddings. And I'm like, text Sacia on how she holds back tears.
How to hold tears.
My last 3 weddings, I have cried to the point of embarrassment. Yep. Like, shut up. I have to walk away. And then the planner's like,
if you just take your finger and you just hold it in the palm of your hand, you can hold it fiercely.
Show us with your hand.
yeah, what do you mean here?
Just like you literally just get like good, for a second ago, like I'm stretching.
Okay. I just think I shouldn't photograph speeches and dances anymore. I should just be my shooter. Whatever. I want to talk about it. That's not this conversation. It's another one. But okay, so the next question, and anybody can volunteer to go before we get to Q&A, is what's one practical step that people can that you'd offer to our peers to foster more inclusivity and representation? So one practical step. I know we talked about one thing you wanted them to know, but how can they immediately get started? Charmi.
I think we've been referred to this a little bit throughout our conversation, but I think it's literally genuinely diversifying your life. There should be people of all tones in your life. There should be deaf people in your life. There should be queer people in your life. There should be people of different cultures, immigrants, not immigrants. There should be, because diversity is obviously more than just skin tones. But if your life does not look like what you want your portfolio to look like, then you are tokenizing people when you ask them if you can use them for your portfolio, which is icky, and don't do it. If you build genuine connections with people, your life will start to look like that. And by the way, it'll be better.
Absolutely.
Genuine connection.
So I called you. We've never met or spoken, and I didn't really know a lot about you at that time, but I know a lot about you now. I called you. I said, hey, I'm doing this thing. And I know that our project manager knew about you, and she was like, she would be perfect for this. When we were highly intentionally putting together this exact skin tones panel, I called you, and you were such an advocate for yourself. Your first response, without knowing me at all, was, I will not be a token. Will I be the only brown person? Will I be the only woman? And I was like, absolutely not.
And we fell in love with you.
And I was like, I have to have you because that's the conversation that has to be had. And you were like, excellent. If it's actually diverse and you can promise me that, then I will do it. And I was like, I can promise you that.
I think it's because I am in a position where I can say no now. I would never advocate for a woman of color, especially, or a Black woman, to say no to an opportunity or something where they can enrich their lives or their career because they might be the only one. That's a really hard position to be in, to have to choose between, all right, I'm going to be the only one, and in some ways I'm being used, but also it might be really great for my career. But at the same time, at this point, almost 18 years in, I have the ability now to say, like, I have these opportunities. I don't have to do everything, and I want to work with people who have the same vibe that I do for life.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashley, what about you?
I would piggyback on what she just said about your life. It kind of goes back to, your sense of other. Do you have a desire to know about other people's experience? That's what I think about with the whole Great Awakening in the mirror. It made us look into ourselves. It made us question our own biases, our own stereotypes, and our own desires, what's really resting in our hearts. And so I agree wholeheartedly. Like, the beauty of the friendships that I have, we have such a diverse group of friends that are around me, and that's different beliefs, that's different cultures, that's different sexual orientations. It has enriched my life so much to have people who I can go to and have better understanding, and the relationship is there. There's no misinterpretation. as to why I'm asking these questions, because they know the heart of who I am. And so I think it is really important to try to expand those circles around you. I'm so used to being the only Black person in the room, and it's never something that I am comfortable with. I even started like counting at weddings sometimes to see like how many people of color are here, you know? And it's astounding to me that there could be 200, 300 person wedding and there's only one person of color that's there, not including myself. That is astounding. I call that copy and paste. So I feel like it's important to encourage to just not have a copy and paste circle in any sense of it, you know, any sense of your life, because it will say something about you without you saying it.
Yep.
So,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. John?
I feel like, you guys are so correct because like the way I teach my kids is eat this, eat this, eat this, eat this. Like I want food is culture, right? And so like my nephew and my niece, all they eat is chicken fingers and pizzas, and that's it. It's like I tell my sister, what are you doing? My kids are diverse in everything because I feel it's so important to have that induced to them early so they are curious and they understand. If you don't like it, don't do it. Eat something else next time, but try it out. So it goes back to the same thing, like having a circle of friends, the people you are around with, ask questions, be curious, respect. And so I love it when people come to me, they come to my area and they're like, hey, what's good? What kind of Vietnamese food or Chinese food is good? Like, let's go here. This is the Mecca place. And I love to showcase that because food brings everybody together. Yeah. And so I feel like it's so, it's such an honor to let people like understand what you were brought up to and tasting different cultures. It's so good. Like I love it when I get to go out with friends that are from like other soul foods or barbecues, and I just love to eat because I get to experience what they love,
Right.
And we're all humans, right? So hopefully one day, if everybody has a smile on their face, there won't be war.
Yeah. Thank you, John Lennon. I just imagine the joke. I like it. I just imagined that COVID horrible video starting where each one of us started. Oh my God. We took turns. All of a sudden, Gail Gadot popping in. Carlos, how about you?
Yeah, I think being genuinely curious. When you have conversations with people, be genuine about what you want to know. Not just for your own gain or for, you have an agenda of some sort. Just like start with being, having friendships with people that don't look like you. And then those conversations come up, about, what is it that you like? What is it like John, you're saying, where's your favorite Chinese food or whatever? Those things, don't just start with those. Start with the friendship and then those things will come up and your lives will be enriched. And then if you do have children, make sure that those children are seeing those things in you as well, because we are raising the next generation of people who are going to be in this world, rule this world. So yeah, let's make sure that they are having those same ideals as you want them to have, and you want the future to have. With kids right now, and our boy, like he is so excited about seeing people's like, oh, I remember we just went to Mexico. Charmi, I asked you a question privately because we went to Mexico and I'm Mexican if you didn't know, and my wife is from Finland, and he is so excited whenever he sees people that look like him and talk like him. He's like, hey, look, he's speaking Spanish just like me, and he's excited about cultures and different people and different ideals, and just it's sweet to see that coming up from little kids.
Yeah. Wait, I have one more thing. I think it's a good one. So this is removed from what we were talking about, but still good for the industry and good for all of us, I think. The way that I became an icon ambassador, I think 6-7 years ago now, is that somebody said my name in a room I wasn't in. Mm-hmm. And then somebody else repeated my name in a room I wasn't in. And then someday those people who had already heard my name, and I know this to be true, saw me speak at a conference and were like, oh, and I've already heard her name.
Yeah.
And so I make it a point myself, on top of advocating for myself whenever possible. I don't know if you remember, I probably said something about, if you need a name for the panel, I have a list. I make it a point to speak other people's names when they're not in the room, so that whatever door I have crossed, I am never crossing it alone.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that you made sure of that. You are not alone.
Yeah.
On the call, I was very, I loved your boldness. I love a bold moment. And I was like, I love her immediately.
Yep.
I don't know her, but I'm gonna. Sacia, what is one tangible, actionable item that people can do? And then we have to open up Q&A, which, yes.
Okay. All right. So, well, to tell people when I talk on this topic, to take constant inventory on what you are, your collateral, your websites, your socials, what you're putting out. I think so too often we're landing on people's websites and we're talking directly to guides and we're talking as if there's no groom involved or there may be 2 grooms or 2 brides or whatever. Like, we're not using inclusive terms in our contracts and everything. Like, any collateral that you're putting out, just making sure that you have fostered this same feeling of how I want to be appropriate with you and how you want to be addressed and everything like that. I think that's really important. Just take constant inventory. At the start of every year, my team and I, we go through our contracts, we go through all of our collateral and make sure that everything is updated the way that it needs to be. So it's appropriate. Taking stock of your portfolio, making sure that, you know, if you have diverse work and it's a priority to you for you to shoot diverse weddings and whatnot, people, that you are putting in work there. Because, I mean, a lot of us, I mean, it's hard to get back into data work sometimes when you're super busy, but like, it's really important is to keep showing up and keep showing the things. Also, I always equate this to like when things happen like in politics and, you know, senators will come out and be like, we're introducing this bill that is like so grand, and you're like, oh, you know, it's free healthcare. Issue with just fixing this one thing. And I think it's the same in our business. Like, you don't have to go and like make these grand statements or do these grand gestures to like prove that you are, you know, the safe space or diverse or whatever. It can just be little small things that you do. It can be how you spend your week, where you spend your time, speaking names in rooms that other people aren't in, showcasing diverse vendors on your profile, like highlighting these people when they do amazing work and it's applicable, can help create a sense of equity within our industry.
Yep. Honestly, that goes with the question we just put in here, which is, so here we are, right? And there's my yogurt. So we're all here and we're so grateful that you're here, and this conversation is so needed and so important. But let's be honest, people are afraid to have this conversation. Why? We know that it's likely because they're afraid to offend or they don't know how to get started, so they avoid it. Notice that we've been up here for over an hour having incredible, deep conversation, and there are no questions in the Q&A box. But there are questions in the crowd. They don't know how to ask or approach it. Could you give them some tips or tricks on how to start this conversation in a way that they can feel confident to have that 15 seconds of bravery to start changing the diversity in their lives? Anyone?
Yeah, I'll start.
Great.
I think most of us are afraid of the things that we don't know.
Yeah.
So if you don't know something, you're afraid that you're going to offend somebody or you're going to say the wrong thing. To me, I feel like the best thing to do is start with, don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to ask, but I want to learn about this specific topic. I don't want to say the wrong thing, so please guide me through this. And anybody on the opposite end who is willing to just share about their life or whatever experience, they'll be more open to talk to you about that and be like, oh, this person wants to learn. They don't know how to ask. I'll guide you through it. And I think from us, from our perspective, people of color, we need to be open to that. To people say, you know, we don't know how to ask for what to say. Maybe it could be also from us that we are sometimes not completely open to hearing things that maybe are not quite aligned with us, but just to be open and be okay to guide them through the conversation on the way we think it's best. So I think it's a little bit of both. It needs to have a little bit of work from both sides as well.
Yeah.
I love what you just said, Carlos. I also want to say, if you are someone who is reaching out to a person of color and you're wanting to have better understanding, one thing, like you said, is showing that transparency and that and showing that heart through it, but give that person the space. If they don't want to have that conversation, it could be very traumatic for them. It could be give them PTSD. It could be a lot of emotional labor for them to even navigate through those things. For me, during the Great Awakening and a lot of people reaching out, at some point it was hard. It got hard.
Yeah.
As I was living through the emotions and everything that was going on in my home and my kids and so on. And so I started sending resources. I didn't have to go through all of the conversations. I started sending resources. These are some excellent podcasts to listen to. These are great speakers, and books that you can read that will really open up, your mind into the sense of other. And so I think it's definitely two-way.
That's good. And
I think it's often on the asker to create a safe situation, a safe space for the person to answer. I have told people who I love, white women, like who I trust in every other way, I'll tell them a story. For example, around 2020, there was a neighbor of mine who said that I would never be as American as her. We'll save the story for another time, but those exact words, because she was trying to tell me how to be American. And I was like, girl, I was born in New York. I'm okay. And she was like, no, you'll never be as American as I am. And when I told that to a white woman friend, she was like, well, maybe that's not what she meant. I think that in these conversations where you ask a question and you're asking someone to put in some work to dig into their life to respond, you have to be ready to be uncomfortable with the answer and not challenge them so hard on their own life experience. So if you ask a question and you get an answer, you do have to be ready to say, thanks for sharing, instead of, well, maybe you misunderstood.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be very invalidating.
Yeah.
Amen to that, Charmi, because that's part of what we call freedom, right? It's like, it's a dialogue between each other and respect the person's thought process and embrace it instead of creating this conflict, getting offended. I won't get offended if you ask me about what my culture is like, what I've grown up to do in my life, right? So it's like, I want to spread my knowledge. I want to give you what I am, who I am, so that we're, in the end, right, it's the same thing, humans. And if we can go towards that and just respect each other, there's freedom.
Sacia, you actually no. I think you did touch on this one. I think she kicked us off. I think you kicked us off. Well, I wanted to add, a lot of times people say that it's a two-way street. It's not a two-way street. It's like a high five. It's a highway exchange with a million different exits, and you got to get all the way over here and all the way over there, and you can get overwhelmed. Yeah. As a fair-skinned white girl, I have been the idiot so many times, and I have had gracious friends who are like, hey, uncool, or hey, that's you probably don't know this, but that can be offensive. And I'm like, oh shit, I didn't know that. And what's great about that, and why I really encourage, is that you can be a wonderful person with great intentions and still be a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
And friends will still love you and guide you. So the fear of having the conversation valid, and you all touched a little bit on how to start the conversation. I'm talking about, you're in a group setting in the middle of a conversation and you just make a one-off comment that you have no idea has some other kind of meaning. Sure. You can be a good person and be an idiot. And if you have the right people around you intentionally, they will tell you that and help you. And then you can in turn help other idiotic,
blonde. You know? So it starts with you being willing to just listen, both if they don't want to talk about it or if they do, but you don't have to go to somebody and be like, I would like to have a conversation with you about diversity.
Right.
You could just be in the middle of a situation and hear somebody say something like, I was told I'm not as American, and just ask them to share their life. You know, we're all having this human experience. And you can be like, can you share that with me? I've honestly never experienced that or thought about that. And then let it change you.
Right. So we do have 2 questions that coincide over in the Q&A, which I think are a nice little and way out.
John already took it.
John said, bye. And these harken back to that whole like color theory talk that we kind of touched on. Before I ask this question, for you guys and the cultures that you represent, what would you say are the undertones that are misrepresented for the people who look like you? Because I think that even hearing these colors out loud, we can go answer these questions more appropriately.
So yellow and red tones are typically ones that typically get a little bit wumpy for people with brown skin color. Was that your question?
Yes, you did great.
And you did great.
We were thinking maybe someone would jump in, but we're gonna, yeah.
Oh,
He's like,
what was the question? I was sure.
What are the undertones of people who look just like you that are misrepresented? What can we expect from the Asian communities that would be wrong when you see images?
Asian skin tones, like my kids and my wife has more of a pale skin tone, whereas a lot of Asians are, I guess, yellow. So yeah, you get the yellow and you get the green and the red undertones that could throw it off. And I think for me, it's like I've been really fortunate to shoot like a lot of campaigns for like Pump Pretty Sugar, and so they brought in so many different types of skin tones, like models and stuff. So understanding like what Carlos was saying, it's just the undertones of yellow and red for certain like skin tones like Asians, and then there's Caucasians, there's black. So it's like you have to know the balance between those skin tones.
Absolutely. Ashley.
I was actually gonna divert it to Sacia. So she can see that we're both black, so
Right. I was just going in circle.
take it away.
Yeah. So between my husband and I, he's a little bit lighter complexion than I am, so we often have an issue with girls with the red and blue undertones for us, and so a lot of times in the past when we have a little bit of an off experience with skin tones, it's like one of us will be like weird looking, or one of us will have like just too much orange and saturation. So I think even paying attention to your sliders is really important. That HS panel is your friend for skin tones, and don't just apply it for time and not make any changes.
And then last but not least.
Me?
Yeah, girl. I mean, same, but I would say my thought is I think a lot of people look at the overall thing, and especially with Indian weddings, people want colors to pop.
Right.
Skin tone don't need to pop. We don't need orange people.
that's right.
Thank you. So we can have some flowers pop and not have people look like they're balloons.
Something that I've seen some of my photographer friends do is take a picture, even if it was just decor, take a picture on their phone so that they can compare it when they start to edit to make sure that it's true to what they actually saw in person. And that
Yep. Okay. And you guys with more in-depth questions about how to nail accurate skin tones and all of those things, if you guys have any like tried and true tips that you can say quickly and efficiently, that's great. We do have an entire glow up, which is a multi-day event that is spent on how to accurately and very deliberately capture honest skin tones, but
Camera and post.
in camera post, choosing location,
light.
all the things. But
Using light, I think that's the most important thing.
yeah,
Using good light, embracing whatever light is there, and going towards that in post later.
that's the big one.
You have time to try to get accurate skin tones in camera all the time because wedding work is so fast paced. When I'm shooting like campaigns for studio work, I'm controlling everything. I'm adding my lights and I'm making sure I have my gray card. I'm shooting. You can't do that on a fast paced day, So,
Right.
yeah.
I do think there's some level of, like, if you are using flash, given experience and time, you will get used to when you need CTO, whether you need a quarter or half or full. Like, if you put some effort in there, you'll figure out, kind of considering your ambient, what is required for your humans.
Yeah.
So it's worth playing with. Don't play with it when you're being paid, but figure it out.
Can I tie this with the last conversation because I think Patrick he's like talk about this like
Hey, Patrick. How you doing?
basically like with the Asian culture, right? There are Southeast Asians where they're darker because they're more tropical.
Yeah.
So when I went to Thailand, people thought I was Thai because like I absorb the sun so easily. I don't get red. But like imperialistically, you see Chinese or Japanese, Koreans, they want that fair skin tone. They want to be covered all the time. Like, don't get the sun to touch me at all, stuff like that. So you got to understand your demographics and go towards that when you see. And using reflectors, using things to make sure that you're not getting cast and stuff like that is important.
Yeah. Patrick, that you texted him, that was such a beautiful point. He also called you a hunk earlier. And
Did you see? I'm trying to tell him to send me his profile photo because he made me shoot that. I was like, I want to see it in full res.
yeah, we also want to see it in full res. Drop it in the chat, Patrick. There's a little paper clip right there.
He's like, I want people to see my long hair. I'm like, okay.
So the luscious lock.
Just a warning for people who might shoot Indian families, because Patrick wants us to stay on topic. You will see a variety of how people feel about their skin tones in Indian culture. My mom used to yell at me when I was a kid and be like, stay out of the sun, you're going to get dark. And I was a jerk even then. And I was like, sounds great, I'm going, bye. But I was hired for a wedding last year on 3 weeks notice because her photographer did another event for her and she just felt like she looked nearly as white as her white friends and felt that I would more accurately portray her skin tones. And she was an Indian woman approximately my age. And so in Indian culture, there's a lot of shifting happening. There's a lot of embracing our skin tones happening. And so, yeah, I mean, I didn't want to work that day because it was my kid's birthday. But if you tell me that you're worried about skin tones, I am a sucker and I'll do it.
You there? Yeah.
So also, one thing to note is also be mindful of what's around you when you're taking the picture. So here in Oregon, we have a lot of greens. We have a lot of electric green pastures. So whenever you're photographing things like that, it's going to bounce back. So be mindful of what's around you, what the skin tones will look like with the things that are around. And also calibrate your screens. Can't say this enough. I don't know what this means. There's two things you're calibrating for. Don't forget. You're calibrating for screen and you're calibrating for print. So make sure you know why you're calibrating for each one. It's really interesting. I remember at the beginning when I was calibrating, I was like, I need to calibrate for just print. So we calibrate for print, and then my client would be like, why do I look so different than what I remember? I was like, wait, yeah, you're looking at it on your iPhone. You're not going to print this picture, are you? Just looking at it. So just make sure those nuances are understood.
Yeah.
I just want to add one final thing from a planner perspective. And on the topic of, the vendor relationships, if you are wanting to work with more diverse clients, oftentimes it's the planner who sets up the team who recommends the photographers and the videographers. So if the planners that you tend to work with are all one shade, and you're wanting to have a diverse portfolio, then it may be a good idea to reach out to some planners that are brown and black shades and form relationships so that they can recommend you. It shows them that you actually want to shoot a diverse, clientele. So that helps.
1,000,000%. You guys, like, I've said it before, but we're just two fair-skinned white girls. We can start this conversation and bring this together. So can you. It's not easy for any of us, but it's really important. And you have power in what you're putting out. And the biggest power you have is impacting the next generation of photographers that look like you, and brides that look like you. So use your voice. And it's culturally such a big thing that it's going to take a lot of us. Yeah. And so together we can, but it starts with together. So again, if we can do it, you can do it. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you both for having us and for starting this conversation. That's important. And just because you're white doesn't mean you can't start the conversation. So thank you for doing that.
Great takeaways. John wrote a song about unity and love. And this has been a great conversation.
Imagine. No, don't do it. Don't do it, girl.
Can I tell you guys what I've recently discovered I want to share with everybody?
Yeah.
Is this.
What is it?
It's gum from Greece.
Oh.
If you want like strong jaws, like you chew on this all day long and it just lasts and lasts. But I think it helps with snoring.
Okay. Talking about cultural.
I'm literally texting my husband right now.
Every night I tape my mouth with this, and I gave some to Patrick. I don't think he did it, but this is a game changer. It's
Happening right now.
Putting it together has been really good.
She's like, kill you.
Yep, that's amazing. Wow, that's well for you.
So the taping of the mouth. This is a 3M micro pore tape.
My husband works at 3M.
So it just makes it makes your mouth like it induces more nose breathing. So in turn, it helps your jaw.
Wow. Well, now we know. Link in the chat for all of us.
Ultimately, you should see an ENT about why you don't nose breathe properly. My husband just did that and had surgery. And now we can breathe.
I love where we took it. Thank you, John, for bringing here, but and health and preventing getting a little too emotional. So that's a great way to go. Yep, we love you guys dearly, very much. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your time. We're honored and we couldn't be more grateful. What a gift.
Getting great skin tones and great light is easy, but what if bad light is your only option? You can't risk freezing up when you're dealt less than ideal light, because your clients deserve to love how they look in their photos, and nailing skin tones is a major step in that direction. That's why we created the Skin Tones Glow Up. Learn how to get gorgeous glowing skin tones for all of your clients, from location scouting to editing, and never doubt yourself again. Head to developacademy.com/skin-tones and use code GLOWON for 15% off.